Good morning, Alex and friends. I'm Grace. Today is Thursday, June 12th, 2025, and you're listening to Alex's News. The weather in Riverside today will be quite warm, with a high of 86.9 degrees and the low settling at 63.2 degrees. Be sure to stay hydrated and perhaps plan some indoor activities this afternoon. Coming up on Alex's News, we'll explore the implications of China's dual aircraft carrier operations, examining what these activities signal on the international stage. Plus, we'll investigate California's legislative choices, specifically why the state appears to be favoring new development projects over increased protections for its renters. We'll unpack the reasons behind these critical policy decisions and their broader effects. All these stories and more are coming up on Alex's News. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We're starting off this morning with a significant development making waves in the Pacific as China continues to expand its naval capabilities. For more on this, we turn to our national security reporter, Ethan Miller. Ethan, China's two operational aircraft carriers have reportedly conducted their first ever joint operations in the Pacific. What exactly does this unprecedented deployment entail?
Grace, it's certainly a big story. According to reporting this week from ABC News, confirmed by the Messenger and U.S. News and World Report, China's two carriers, the Liaoning and the Shandong, operated together for the first time in the Pacific. They were observed near southern Japanese islands, specifically off Iwo Jima, about 1,200 kilometers or 750 miles south of Tokyo. This marks a substantial expansion of Beijing's military reach and is certainly fueling regional concerns about its rapidly modernizing armed forces.
That sounds like a significant maneuver. And I understand one of these carriers ventured east of what's called the, quote, second island chain, quote. For our viewers who might not be familiar, can you explain what these island chains are and why this particular transit is so noteworthy?
Absolutely, Grace. Think of the, quote, first island chain, quote, as a line of islands off the Asian mainland, including places like Taiwan and the Philippines. The, quote, second island chain, quote, extends further east, encompassing islands like the U.S. territory of Guam. For a Chinese carrier to venture past the first and into the second island chain is a direct challenge to Japan's ally, the United States, as detailed by the Messenger and U.S. News and World Report. It signals China's intent to project power much further from its shores. The Liaoning, for instance, sailed inside Japan's exclusive economic zone of Minami-Torishima, Japan's easternmost island, without violating territorial waters, as confirmed by ABC News. The Liaoning transited the Miyako Strait, while the Shandong likely entered the Philippine Sea via the Luzon Strait, according to ArmyRecognition.com. Both groups were heavily armed, supported by a formidable array of destroyers and frigates.
It sounds like they brought their entire fleet of facts. And what about the reaction from regional powers, especially after reports of an abnormally close encounter between a Chinese jet and a Japanese reconnaissance plane?
That incident certainly raised eyebrows, Grace. During the operations, a Chinese J-15 fighter jet from the Shandong engaged in an, quote, abnormally close, quote, encounter with a Japanese P-3C reconnaissance aircraft. The Chinese jet came within 45 meters or 50 yards and later crossed 900 meters in front of the Japanese plane, prompting Japan to express, quote, strong concern, quote, according to ABC News. Japan's defense minister, Gen Nakatani, voiced Tokyo's deep concern about Beijing's rapidly expanding military activities and their goal to project power at a distance. Japan scrambled fighter jets and deployed surface ships to monitor the Chinese flotillas, as reported by japantimes.co.jp. Taiwan, which China claims as its own, also voiced concerns, stating the dual operations showed China's, quote, expansionist nature, quote, as U.S. News and World Report uncovered. China's Navy, however, maintained these were, quote, routine training, quote, exercises in the Western Pacific.
This deployment certainly highlights China's growing naval ambitions. How do China's current carrier capabilities, particularly these two vessels, stack up against those of the United States?
That's an excellent question, Grace, and it's a key distinction. While China has the world's largest navy numerically, it currently has 3 aircraft carriers compared to the US's 11, as ABC News has uncovered. The Liaoning and Shandong are older designs, repurposed Soviet ships or built on Soviet designs that use a quote ski jump quote launch method called STOBAR. This is quite different from the US Navy's nuclear-powered catapult-equipped carriers. The ski jump system inherently limits the maximum takeoff weight of aircraft, meaning their J-15 fighter jets cannot launch with a full load of fuel and munitions. This directly curtails their combat radius and payload. TheDiplomat.com notes that when carrying a full internal fuel load, the J-15's external payload is limited to a mere 2 tons, significantly less than U.S. carrier-based aircraft.
So it's not just about how many planes they can carry, but how much those planes can carry and how far they can go. What does that mean for their overall combat effectiveness and their ability to sustain long-range operations?
Precisely, Grace. It's a significant practical limitation. For example, a crucial metric is sortie generation rate, the number of aircraft missions a carrier can launch and recover in a day. U.S. Nimitz-class carriers are designed to sustain 120 sorties per day and can surge to 240. China's Shandong has averaged about 63 aircraft sorties per day in 2023 exercises, while the Liaoning has been more modest, averaging about 21 sorties in early 2023, though this increased to an average of 37 after a recent refit, according to globaltimes.cn and eurasiantimes.com. These numbers are significantly lower than what a single U.S. carrier can achieve, as CSIS.org has detailed. Also, ski jumps cannot launch heavier aircraft like fixed-wing airborne early warning aircraft, such as the U.S.'s E-2 Hawkeye, forcing Chinese carriers to rely on less capable helicopters for this role, limiting situational awareness. Finally, these Chinese carriers are conventionally powered, requiring a constant supply of fuel. This necessitates a logistical train of replenishment oilers during extended deployments far from home, which limits their operational range and endurance. U.S. Navy aircraft carriers, being nuclear-powered, have virtually unlimited range and endurance, operating for decades without refueling their reactors. This provides unparalleled strategic mobility and persistence, as explained by Navy.mil.
That really puts things into perspective. But China is clearly not resting on its laurels. What about their third and most advanced carrier, the Fujian? What does that mean for China's future naval power?
The Fujian is a game-changer for them, Grace. It's China's third and most advanced aircraft carrier, expected to be operational later in 2025. It's currently in advanced stages of sea trials, with its sophisticated electromagnetic catapults undergoing rigorous testing. The Fujian, launched in June 2022, began sea trials in May 2024. By late May 2025, it had commenced its 8th sea trial, reportedly involving flight tests with the new J-35 stealth fighter. This EMALS technology is a significant leap from the ski jump design. It will enable the launch of a wider variety of aircraft, including heavier platforms with larger payloads of fuel and munitions, allowing for longer range and more potent strikes, as CSIS.org noted. It's expected to carry a larger air wing, including the J-35 stealth fighters and, critically, the KJ-600 airborne early warning and control aircraft, which will vastly improve situational awareness, according to USNI.org. The EMALS technology is also projected to lead to a substantial increase in the sortie generation rate.
So while this joint deployment is a big step, it seems like the Fujian is the real ace up their sleeve for future power projection. How does the U.S. Navy's current operational tempo in the Pacific compare to what we've just seen from China?
Grace, while China's recent dual-carrier deployment is a significant and unprecedented event, it represents a novel, high-profile exercise rather than a routine operational pattern. The U.S. Navy maintains a consistent and routine presence in the Western Pacific. We operate a forward-deployed carrier strike group from Japan, which spends approximately half of the year at sea, conducting exercises and patrols throughout the region, including the Philippine Sea and waters around Guam. Other U.S.-based carriers are regularly deployed to the Western Pacific for periods typically lasting 6 to 9 months. In fact, during the same period as China's dual carrier operations in June 2025, the U.S. carriers USS Nimitz and USS George Washington were also operating in the Western Pacific, according to usni.org. U.S. carriers maintain a high operational tempo, capable of generating a significantly higher number of sorties per day than their Chinese counterparts. It's about sustained presence versus a notable demonstration.
A great point, Ethan. It sounds like while China is certainly sailing into uncharted waters for them, the U.S. Navy continues to hold its own. Thank you for that insightful analysis, Ethan.
My pleasure, Grace.
We'll be back right after this short break with our next story. Welcome back to the program. For our second story this morning, we're drilling down into California's persistent and acute housing crisis. It's an issue that truly hits home for so many across the state. Reporter Chloe, what's the latest from Sacramento on how lawmakers are trying to tackle this monumental challenge?
Grace, it appears California's legislative strategy to address its housing conundrum is, shall we say, a bit of a fixer-upper. As reported by LAist, citing CalMatters, 2025 has been characterized as a, quote, banner year, end quote, for bills aimed at boosting housing supply. However, efforts to safeguard current tenants from rising costs and potential displacement have largely been curtailed. It's a clear prioritization of building new over buttressing existing residents.
So lawmakers are really putting their architectural focus on increasing supply. What specific types of pro-development measures are we seeing pass?
Indeed, Grace. The focus is on getting more homes built, period. Lawmakers have aggressively pursued measures designed to densify urban areas, significantly streamline building permits, and grant broad exemptions for most apartment buildings from environmental review under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. For instance, Senate Bill 79, which facilitates denser development near transit routes, reportedly navigated the Senate with a narrow margin, according to LAist, citing CalMatters. Even the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, a key regional planning agency for the Bay Area, has noted this legislative push for pro-development bills.
That sounds promising on paper, but has this legislative surge actually laid a solid foundation for more housing units? Or is it more of a paper trail?
That's the million-dollar question, Grace. Despite numerous housing-related bills being signed into law in late 2024 and early 2025 aimed at addressing the state's estimated need for 2.5 million new homes, a February 2025 report from the pro-development group YIMBY Law found that these laws have had, quote, limited to no impact on the state's housing supply, end quote. This muted effect is attributed to persistent local government opposition and the inherent complexity of new regulations. What's more, while single-family construction starts saw a modest increase, multifamily construction starts actually decreased by a significant 17.4% in the 6 months ending in February 2025. And in 2024, there was a 26% drop in multifamily construction from the prior year.
That's certainly not the kind of growth we were hoping for. Are there any other factors dampening the potential for state-funded housing expansion, perhaps financial ones?
Absolutely, Grace. The state's fiscal health is certainly playing a role, with California facing a significant $12 billion budget shortfall. This financial constraint has directly impacted funding for housing initiatives. Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed no additional spending for the state's Signature Homelessness Grant Program, or its main affordable housing subsidy. While the legislature's counterproposal would add some funds to affordable housing, the overall fiscal environment dampens the potential for state-funded housing expansion, as reported by LAist, citing CalMatters.
So less money for affordable housing and minimal impact from the new pro-development bills. What about the other side of the coin, Chloe? Are renters seeing any relief from Sacramento, or are their protections being swept under the rug?
Unfortunately, Grace, renter protections are facing significant headwinds and weakening. In stark contrast to the aggressive pursuit of development-friendly legislation, ambitious renter protection bills have largely been shelved or substantially watered down in Sacramento. A key proposal aimed at reducing allowable statewide rent increases was extinguished, and another bill seeking to limit landlord fees was postponed until next year, according to LAist, citing Cal Matters. Even tenant-focused bills, like Senator Aisha Wahhab's SB 436 and SB 262, were significantly weakened due to, quote, fierce opposition from landlords, end quote.
That sounds like a tough battle for tenants. What's driving this significant legislative imbalance between development and protection? Is it all about lobbying, or are there deeper political and economic currents at play?
It's a multi-story problem, Grace. Powerful lobbying plays a huge role. The California Apartment Association, a prominent trade group, wields significant influence, spending hundreds of thousands on campaigns and lobbying against tenant protection bills. They reportedly donated to 70% of California legislators and spent over $121 million between 2018 and 2020 to defeat statewide ballot measures aimed at protecting tenants. Senator Wahhab herself noted that, quote, fighting for tenants is not popular and it's not easy, end quote, in Sacramento, attributing it to, quote, special interest money, end quote, influencing elections. Voter demographics also contribute. Renters, who constitute 44% of California homes, are less likely to vote or engage politically compared to homeowners, giving homeowners a, quote, much louder voice, end quote.
So it's not just a supply and demand issue, but a political one too. I've also heard arguments that strong renter protections like rent control could actually discourage new construction. Is that a factor in the legislative thinking?
It's a very significant factor, Grace. A prevailing economic argument suggests that stringent renter protections, particularly rent control, can distort the housing market and ultimately exacerbate shortages. The fear among some lawmakers and economists is that making it harder for landlords to raise rents or evict tenants could disincentivize new construction, potentially undermining the state's preferred strategy of boosting housing supply, as noted by LAist, citing Cal Matters. Studies, such as one on San Francisco's rent control, have indicated a 15% decline in rental housing supply due to conversions, and there are concerns about a reduction in the quality of existing housing stock.
That's a valid concern. But are there other states or cities that have managed to balance both robust renter protections and housing development without stifling construction? Is a both-and approach even possible?
Absolutely, Grace, and that's where things get interesting. Empirical evidence from other jurisdictions challenges that premise. Take New Jersey, for instance. Municipalities like Jersey City have maintained a statewide anti-eviction act since 1974, and over 100 municipalities have their own rent control ordinances. Jersey City's rent control ties increases to the CPI, capped at 4%, but crucially exempts new construction. Despite these protections, Jersey City experienced a remarkable building boom between 2010 and 2022, adding almost 26,000 housing units, a rate more than triple the per capita production of the larger New York metropolitan area, according to the Regional Plan Association. This shows that strong tenant protections do not inherently stifle supply.
What about closer to home, say in the Midwest?
Minneapolis offers a more recent illustration, Grace. In 2021, voters approved a rent stabilization ordinance. While initial concerns suggested a slowdown, the ordinance was subsequently amended in September 2022 and again in May 2025 to include a 20-year exemption for new housing construction. Furthermore, a 2025 report from the University of Minnesota's Center for Urban and Regional Affairs provided compelling evidence that contradicts the argument that tenant protections hinder new supply. The study, which compared permitting for new buildings in states with recently passed good cause eviction laws to nearby areas without such protections, concluded that these policies did not have a discernible effect on permitting, a strong indicator of new construction. These examples suggest that well-designed policies can indeed balance tenant stability with housing growth.
It certainly sounds like there's more than one blueprint for success when it comes to tackling the housing crisis. Chloe, thank you for putting all these pieces together for us.
My pleasure, Grace.
We've been discussing California's housing conundrum with reporter Chloe. The information today comes from LAist, Cal Matters, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, YIMBY Law, the Merced Focus, the California Apartment Association, the Regional Plan Association, and the University of Minnesota's Center for Urban and Regional Affairs. In Washington, the Trump administration is looking to clear the air. They are doing this by rolling back rules designed to improve air quality. The Environmental Protection Agency has proposed repealing climate regulations. These regulations limit greenhouse gas and mercury emissions from power plants. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin says the move will save the energy industry over $1 billion a year. The agency also argues that under the Clean Air Act, U.S. power plant emissions do not contribute significantly to global climate change. Critics call the move a dangerous reversal that will harm public health. They say a significant legal battle is now brewing. This is certain to generate heated debate. Meanwhile, drivers are getting a break at the pump. This is helping to slow down overall inflation. The Consumer Price Index rose by a minimal 0.1% in May. This was largely thanks to a 2.6% drop in gasoline prices. The cost of new and used vehicles also fell. However, those savings were offset by rising costs for shelter, food, and imported goods. These goods are feeling the effects of new tariffs. The stubbornness of this core inflation makes it unlikely that the Federal Reserve will be cutting interest rates anytime soon. Overseas, tensions are reaching a critical level over Iran's nuclear program. The UN's nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, has formally censured Tehran. This is for failing to cooperate with its investigation into uranium particles. These particles were found at 3 undeclared sites. It is the first such censure in nearly 2 decades. In a swift and defiant response, Iran announced it will retaliate. They plan to expand their enrichment program, install advanced centrifuges, and build a new facility in a secure location. This escalation comes amid stalled U.S.-Iran talks. There are also reports that Israel is considering a military strike. This casts a dark shadow over diplomatic efforts. The war of words, or at least the war of loudspeakers, is quieting down on the Korean peninsula. In a significant goodwill gesture, South Korea's new government has silenced its propaganda broadcasts aimed at the North. The move is an attempt to prime the pump for restoring trust. This follows a year of bizarre provocations. These included activists sending anti-Pyongyang leaflets into the North. The North retaliated with thousands of balloons carrying trash and manure. In a promising sign, North Korea appears to have turned off its own loudspeakers in response. This brings a welcome silence to residents along the heavily fortified border. Back here at home, a federal crackdown on immigration has sparked widespread protests in major cities. Los Angeles has seen 5 consecutive days of demonstrations. These followed large-scale workplace raids. The raids prompted the deployment of the National Guard and Marines, and the implementation of a curfew. Mayor Karen Bass accused the administration of trying to cause fear and panic. Protests, some leading to clashes and arrests, have also erupted in New York, Chicago, and Seattle. The Department of Homeland Security defended the raids. They stated the raids targeted undocumented immigrants with serious criminal convictions. The department also announced that tactical ICE units are being deployed to several cities with Democratic leadership. That's all we have for now. Today's episode was made by Alexander King with Claude Sonnet 4.0, Gemini Pro 2.5, Gemini Flash 2.5, and Google Cloud Text-to-Speech. I hope you have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow, Alex.